My name is Kristen, and I am married to the D&D expert at the back of the room. But I am no D&D expert or gaming expert. Luckily, we have some folks who are gaming experts. And starting with the lady in the middle, I'd like to introduce you to Melanie Hetzel-Riggin, who is a professor of psychology at Barron. She's also the mother of 2 budding gamers, so next generation, folks, we got next generation, and comic book lovers. She came late to gaming in college, but she fell in love with it. She prefers to play RPGs. Y'all know what that is, right? And Shadowrun, and won a Shadowrun tournament at Gen Con with her co-ed gaming group 3 years in a row until they made you become champs. Like there was no
they wouldn't let us play anymore.
Okay, they wouldn't let, this is pretty much okay, I hate the Patriots, but it was probably like a little bit like being
Yeah, they're like, you got to stop winning, and so next year you're jamming for us.
So, okay. So let's just forget I ever mentioned the Patriots, but you know what I mean. She tends to gravitate towards magic users. Mm-hmm. So that's your preferred class? Mm-hmm. All right. Britty, who I've mentioned several times, and everybody knows I love her jacket, is a storyteller, filmmaker. She's chosen now to appear in her human form, but she is a Dragonborn paladin when she plays D&D. On her podcast, and her podcast is called No Dice. She's excited to learn more about the world of RPGs. And finally, last but not least, my lovely friend, Willow Hurlburt, who's also married to Randy. Go from there. She is a writing teacher turned homeschool mom, and she's actually letting us know that she's here as a second choice behind her eldest daughter, Lily. Lily, who I believe is 11,
13.
Oh, 13? Oh my gosh, I'm behind. She's been writing in ventures using Fate Core and DMing since she was 11. So Lily's 2 years into it, and she's writing love out of stories and everything else. I'm sure because of mom and dad. She got into gaming because of her husband, that's happened to a lot of us, and her love of stones, which translated to a dice addiction, but that's not a problem. However, her first experience was horrible, but we'll hear more about that today. She typically plays D&D, Pathfinder, or Dragon Age, although her favorite of all favorites was her ±5 year, again, I don't know, sometimes I don't know, Buffy the Vampire Slayer campaign set in Erie. She prefers to play druids or to mash up seeming incompatible character combinations like a paladin with a criminal background and levels in rogue. So, ladies, the floor is yours.
Yay! Great.
Awesome. What would you like to talk about?
Well, I can start with my bad story.
Yeah, sure.
Start with the bad story?
I'm curious.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Open up with the bad story.
Open up with the
Yeah,
bad story.
I'm going to block the exit while we do
Which turned out, so Randy had been in a really long-term game, and finally they had ended it because I couldn't join in the middle. It ended it, and I joined it, and it was all men. I was the only woman, and they all left me. Like, they were like, here we are, we're going on to a ship and whatever, and they just were like, yeah, see you later, bye. And they it was my very first time, and I was like, wait a minute, like they literally just all disappeared. They split the party right away, and and I was like, what? I don't even know what to do. Like, I don't know how to roll I know how to roll dice, but like, what am I supposed to do? I mean, they were like actually antagonistic toward me. A little bit. Like, they were like, yeah, no, we don't like you. We don't know you, we don't like you.
And these weren't strangers.
No, it was friends. They were, that we ended up still playing with later, but they are so damn lucky that I
think we're all adults.
Right. Continued to. I mean, it was like my almost brother-in-law, and who else was Jeremy, and yeah, like people that I have known forever. And so they totally were, to a newbie and a woman, they had no compassion at all. So that's what I think women bring, is compassion.
And let me just make a quick disclaimer. Since we're kind of running half and half, if you've counted my dice in a game ever, you know I suck at math. Since we're running about half and half, guys and girls, this is not a man bashing.
Oh gosh,
No,
I don't
no,
mean
no.
to say
So we're
that
just
at
sharing
all.
experiences. But has that happened to any other men or women?
I think that was part of the reason I was late to gaming is because in high school I kind of thought it was interesting, but every time I sort of asked when my friends who were male were talking about, they were going to go play D&D or Magic or something, and I'm like, oh, what's that? Can I come? And they're like, you would not be interested. And I'm like, really? Because I have this like science fiction novel I'm reading,
Exactly.
and I'm going to go read my comic book, and then And so it just like, and they weren't antagonistic about it, but it was just sort of, well, it's a guy thing and whatever. And then I got to college, and I did have a good friend who we lived apart for high school, but in college we were physically closer. And he role played. He was a GMing, and it was a co-ed group, and it was almost 50-50 men and women, and that was phenomenal. And so that's where I really got into it, was in college, because the DM, who was a friend of mine, said, well, why don't you join? And I'm like, oh, this is phenomenal. But in high school, it wasn't, like I said, not antagonistic, but it was like, it's for boys. I'm like, okay.
Well, then I have a confession to make, and that is that I've just started playing. I really picked up in November when we started this whole group, so I haven't had any experience with other gaming groups. I got really, really lucky. The group of friends I have is kind of a mix of women and gender nonconforming, so it's like a lot of already diversity is brought to the table. So everything I've ever heard has been like experience stories. I've never had to experience that, so I've been very lucky, I think, in that regard. But I did kind of push it off to the side for a long time of being like, I don't think this is something I can do, because it was always, I think, presented as something that was more about the like statistics and more about the like. And then when I discovered that there was a lot of storytelling involved, I was like, wait a minute, I do that professionally. Like, I can do this. Right. So I think that was like my jump in. But I never like felt that the stories that were being told weren't something I could relate to. Again, I got really lucky in like the people that I talked to. Their stories were very diverse and interesting. I actually started listening to D&D podcasts, and I managed to pick up the ones that were very inclusive and very, good storytelling. And I was like, I can do that. But I did feel like, oh, that's not for me. I think it's more of a, I hate to use this word, but like a vibe that people give off when they've been playing D&D for a really long time. Of new people coming in, you have to like fit qualifications. It's like, I'm pretty sure anybody can do this.
Well, I find it interesting when I go to places like Origins or Gen Con and I'm playing a 4-hour game and I'm like the only woman. And they look at me like, oh, great, it's a woman. And I get like I'll play the magic user. They're like, okay, you can be the healer. Like, because of course, whatever. Which I do love playing magic users. And then like the last time I did that, I ended up like killing half of the attackers in like the first round. And they were like, well, all right then. I was not expecting that. So, that kind of stuff happens, I think, more than people think. Again, I haven't ever been like, oh my God, you can't play, but more of like, oh, okay, I guess.
Do you feel like they put you into these like stereotypical like nurturing, like healing roles of like because of your gender?
So the funny part is, they try to, but the funny part is, so I'm a therapist by training. That's what I do for a living and what I teach people to be, and that's totally not who I play in games. Like, my favorite character is a character in Shadowrun, because that's my favorite game, Karma, who her favorite thing is to blow stuff up.
Yes.
And anything she can do to blow people up, stuff up, she doesn't really care. It's huge, and she has no problem with wet work. It's like it's her favorite thing to do, as long as it's colorful and loud and big and pretty. So they try, and then I find some way, either through a flaw they didn't actually pay attention to, or a random spell that was like tacked on at the end, and then they're like, well, that was the Spanish Inquisition. So that stuff happens a lot. So they try, but then it doesn't.
Well, and the funny thing is that I tend to still be that sort. I'm always like the straight man. I'm always like the butt of the joke, but kind of on purpose.
Okay.
However, I feel like that they still don't understand that you can still be like in whatever role that you decide, because I tend toward way more feminine models. I just do.
Yeah.
But like I will do something that they're like, oh, that's not going to work, and then it does. Like I
Yeah.
just go about it a totally different way. Like I'll play gnomes a lot, so I play the little diminutive, river, my gnome, druid person, and like making thorn whip like totally work for me.
Yeah.
Like they're like, that's just a cantrip, and you can do it over.
Well, I think you're being too modest. Your paladin is a badass. Honestly.
Yeah, paladin.
Yeah. Well, and she was modeled after Snow on what's it called again? I can't even. Once Upon a Time.
Oh.
So,
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
so she has a criminal background, but she's
Walking the path.
she on the line,
Straddling the line.
straddling that line, and I totally forgot where I was. Yeah, some, but So I think that there's room for that too. That.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have like a lot, I think, to input on that, because right now this is the first character I've ever played. So I'm like trying things, we're doing it. I think the reason that a lot of character traits are happening is just because I want to try something different than myself.
Yeah.
It's like
I'm
I'm
not good at
playing a game, let's see what I can do. But there are some, I think, aspects of playing any kind of character that you bring yourself to the table. And so it's your personality plays a huge role in your character's personality, and it's not necessarily like that it's the same, but I think on some level you can't get away from, like, if you're a nice person, maybe one or two nice things are going to happen, and then you're like, oh wait,
Yeah.
But I think that the feminine aspects of a character don't necessarily have to be specific, like specifically to, oh, you're a woman, you have to play a dainty elf,
Right.
that
Right. Yeah.
flowers and all that thing. There's a lot of depth that you can bring.
Well, right now I'm basically playing Groot, so.
Really?
Yes.
Nice.
Yes, I am.
One of
Female
Female
group, although
Yeah.
you can't really tell.
Genderless group.
Genderless group, yeah.
No, the Shadowrun tournament the third time we won, and they told us we couldn't play anymore. My good friend Lori, who in real life is like 5'2", she's a geologist, mom, like wouldn't hurt a fly. She played a troll brick, who like would take out everybody, and it was very like counter to who she was as like in her normal days. But she was phenomenal. It's like, oh, look at bad guys, down, whatever, just sort of nonchalant, like take out the enemy. And it's kind of thinking about like what women can bring to gaming is sort of that sort of nuance that change. Like one of the things I think that allowed us to win the Shadowrun tournament 3 years in a row was because we had 3 women and 3 men. It was six people, and we would do stuff that was like not just the combat. I do think that when it's a predominantly male group, there's a lot of focus on combat and the numbers and all of that, which needs to happen. It doesn't. I mean, it needs to. But sometimes I have seen that gets lost there. So the storytelling and the creativity and the ingenuity about how you solve problems, I think sometimes gets lost. And I know that, but all 3 years when we won, it was that sort of creative way of solving the problem that really put us over the edge. And I think if we didn't have the 3 women to sort of suggest alternatives or try things off the wall, we wouldn't have got those sort of extra points that would have led us to win, because it would have been about who can blow things up the best. Which, don't get me wrong, my character blew up a lot of stuff, but I think in terms of what it is, that in terms of what women can bring to gaming is sort of that storytelling. I think that we tend to gravitate towards it more, and although combat is fun, it's not 4 hours of combat, it's 2 hours of combat and 2 hours of storytelling with combat in between, and I think that makes a better game personally.
I would add on to that. So doing this as a podcast, I'm playing a game, but I'm also playing it with the intention of releasing it as a story, and our role playing is the linchpin that holds the whole thing together. It's what keeps people interested in what we're doing. And I think that we find our moments in that storytelling, and then the combat is like character driven, and so it's more interesting of like, oh, this character did this move in combat because of X, Y, and Z that's already happened. And I didn't realize, I think when I first started, that was going to be the like holding the glue was all of this storytelling. And that was so, like, that revelation was like, oh, this is what I can bring to the table, is like being a storyteller, being someone invested in a character. Like, that is something I can bring. And having the group right now that I have, a lot of them I met when I was in school for filmmaking, and so it's all that storytelling background.
Really
so we're
nice,
all
yeah.
kind of in it together, and just having that group of diverse gender, it's everybody brings something different. And so when you play with a group that's like 50-50, do you notice that there are things that like people can bring that surprise you, or kind of like that storytelling aspect, but also someone that you weren't expecting to bring that backstory in? Or
I think it happens more often. And I just want to stop because I think some people had their hands up, and I didn't know what we're doing.
I was
So
just kind of, when you said like with like bringing in the diversity, have you ever seen the movie Gamers?
I think so. Yeah.
The one where they bring in the girl,
Yes.
and she's talking to the farmer and everything, and it like completely changes their play style.
Yeah.
And because they bring her in, they actually have more to do.
Yeah.
So it's just, I don't know.
Yeah, I think it definitely increases interest for everyone. Everyone gets more invested. When it's character driven, everyone is more invested.
And it leads from that 4-hour campaign to 4-hour play session to a campaign.
Yeah.
I think about one time, my friend Lori, again, who played the Brick, we were playing a DC Heroes game, and the DM was a huge Batman fan, like huge. And I don't even know what it was, but Lori, like I said, is a geologist, and they got into a 2-hour argument over the course of the night about the makeup of the Bat Cave. And was it granite? And she's like, it can't be granite because of where it is. And like, that stuff wouldn't happen, I think.
I think people will be out at that point. It's me? Really?
Better than
Okay.
a 2-hour
Yeah, just
argument as
me.
to whether a character blew up or not.
Oh my God.
That more.
Yeah. I mean, the other interesting thing that I found, and I'm not sure how this comes into it, but in the games that I play, and I'm usually the only girl, so it's usually, although Pauletta now plays too, yay, that there will be other male characters who play females, and they will, and honestly, and some of them are, gender non-conformant, whatever, I don't even know what to say, but my husband has played women before, and has actually came across something where, like, he was uncomfortable in that situation, like, because he's with a bunch of guys, right? And so they think, oh, well, like, we can be like, all like, ha 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 ha. They're like, we're gonna, what was it? Can you please add
I'm
to
not
it?
sure which
It's the
one.
one where you were, nobody who's in here. It was, you were playing that woman, and they were.
So I was joining a D&D, or actually a Pathfinder campaign that was already in progress. They'd only played a couple of episodes, a couple of sessions, and I was going to play a female character, a female bard, and the DM decided to introduce my character by having her almost raped.
I know.
That happened to me
Meaning
too.
my character had been grabbed and dragged down to the sewers, and the other characters heard me screaming from up above.
Oh.
And I've got all these bad guys who are, and I
mean, he came
probably
home
went
and
back
he was
maybe
like-
twice, and I quit. I just
Yeah.
That happened to me too.
So I think that it's really. I mean, what I find interesting, and I'm sorry that
No,
I'm
go
interrupting,
finish.
Is that by being able to role play, you can choose what gender you want to discover and find out. Like, I think that you found out, like, really quickly how it might feel to be in danger and to be, like, diminished just because, like, would he have done that if it was a male character? No. That's not how he would have been introduced.
No.
Well,
At all.
It was, part of it was the idea of basically starting this character out in a, I don't know what to call it, a weakness, a moment of weakness, as a victim.
Yeah.
Rather than
Being
introducing a character in a
victimized.
strong
Yeah,
way.
actively being victimized
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
the intro.
Yeah.
If you
Hello.
don't mind, because you got so much going on right here, I was really trying not to step in, but I think in that aspect, just full disclosure, right? That's my background is victim advocacy.
Right.
So I think in that place, first of all, if anybody feels triggered, obviously.
Oh, I am so sorry. I did not even.
Yeah, and no, we
My
should.
apologies.
I mean, this is a safe space,
Yeah.
so I just want to just reiterate
I'm
that
so
piece.
sorry.
But I think that's an important. I think that's a
the
really no. But I think that's a really important piece because I'm hearing that the more I got ready for this day, the more I heard stories like that where. I heard a lot about men writing, and again, I'm not bashing, but a lot of kind of stereotypical sexist, and I mean, certainly saw it and heard about the readings with like J.R.R. Martin. We see kind of assault-driven plot devices and a lot of fantasy.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, like, what are your responses to those? And that's, I mean, I can't imagine anything for anybody, male or female, more horrific.
And my first thought was, if I played a male character, he wouldn't have done it.
Yeah.
So
what are your responses to situations like that?
Hits.
Eric,
So in this game, my two friends of mine who they got an earful because I do interpersonal violence prevention and intervention too as a therapist. That's my area, and they knew about it because I was in grad school at the time, and they thought, this will be funny. And they were both with friends of mine. They were both, one was married and one was dating, and they got the cold shoulder for a long time after that one too, because we basically fast forward our game 5 years, and somehow they thought it would be funny to make my character a prostitute.
oh wow.
And I woke up I woke up in game right before, and I was livid. I'm like, I'm sorry, what is happening? And they're like, I'm like, no. And I was not happy because and the other two women that I was gaming with, they were also fast forwarded to places where they were all not in that level, but level like a power. One was homeless and another one was institutionalized or something. And then the men were the people who had the power. And I was like, come on, seriously, this is not appropriate. And
I mean, and it can give an opportunity for the discussion that needs to occur at that point, which is,
and having a discussion about how I get you want to move the plot forward, but there are other ways to do it without victimizing the women in your gaming group and causing them these things.
How about some parity between the sexes, right?
exactly like have one of the men wake up there, or something,
or
not
there's other
good.
ways to
It's not
it's
good.
all
I
like
don't even
not.
think that's good.
I think that there's like so much more interesting. I think you can still have violent situations in a fantasy world. Like the fact that we're already building this, we get to make all of this up. There's so many more interesting, I think, ways to have someone in danger or have someone trying to protect someone else. Or there's so many more interesting ways to do. I mean, you have magic, for crying out loud. You have dragons, for crying out loud. Like, there are so many other interesting things you can do. And like, I've been very lucky because the group that I'm playing with right now, the DM, she's in seminary, and so obviously feels very strongly about we're not going to do any kind of sexual violence. That's that's not right. And all of us, I think, feel that we have a much more interesting story to tell than necessarily going off of that victimizing. And there's so many more, I think, interesting ways to show danger, to show I need help, I am in a situation of vulnerability. Like, for example, the game that I'm playing right now started off with the character I'm playing finding out that her mentor wasn't who she said she was. She had another identity, and so my character just lost it. She could not deal with that, and so she went on this kind of path of, I'm going to find out what is the truth. And that's a personal identity journey that doesn't revolve around being victimized. And I think that that's 10 times more interesting. We're already, I think, so saturated in the way that we view media these days with sexual violence against minorities, especially just in general, that why not make it different? Why not try something new and engaging that... I think that's the challenge. How can you do the story you want to tell that maybe it does revolve around sexual violence without it? Now there's your challenge. Challenge yourself as like a DM, as a writer, as a person making a character. I think, how can you make that more interesting?
Let me quick question.
Sure.
Do you three women think that, at least for D&D and role-playing games, do you feel that we're starting to move away from it's a boys' club? Because, I mean, I know back in the day it always was. It was very rare to see a woman playing. Full disclosure, we brought my mom into our campaign right after I graduated high school, so we did have a lady in there. I mean, I'm interested in your thoughts on that. Like, do you think we're starting to move away from that?
I think we are. I think we're
so.
moving.
Yeah.
I think we're not there yet, but I think there's definitely we're much closer to that than we used to be.
Right. I mean, case in point, I mean, maybe, or at least an example, Lily wrote the Fate core thing on, what was it? It was Dragons.
She did How to Train Your Dragon.
She did How to Train Your Dragon, but then she also did that other dragon Wings of Fire. So she did a Wings of Fire, and it was all girls. She had how many girls did we have over?
Yeah.
We had like 6 other girls, so there were 7 girls at the table. Yeah, and she did a campaign, so there was 3 Sundays that all of those girls, their parents dropped all of the girls off at our house to play Wings of Fire. So, yeah.
Full disclosure, Gabe and Kristen and I play in, of the 6 players, 4 are women.
Awesome.
Again,
Men are in the minority there.
I think, like I said, I'm coming from this with such a privileged kind of angle. I went to a very diverse school. Even if I would have started playing in college, it still would have been incredibly diverse. I have a group of friends that are very different, and so my experience playing has been, you know, it is really not a boys' club, but the response has still kind of been like a little bit of gatekeeping, and I know that if I'm listening to like D&D podcasts, they're mostly guys. Now, not that they aren't great and interesting, and they've really tried to take a look at who's listening, but it's still like, it feels like the representation is still a lot of dudes. But like the actuality of players to me seems like a lot of women, and also, you know, non-binary kind of gender. So it's like there's a lot of diversity.
I would say definitely that I think we've made more progress in including women than we have in terms of including people of color. That has been my experience. Yeah. That we've made much more progress there than we have in including people of color. Has been my gaming both in my own groups and then at conventions and different things, I think.
And that's such an important conversation to have too, because it's like we aren't saying, oh, hey, you know, no men allowed. We're saying, you know, that there's been a history of white cis straight men playing this game, and there's so much more diversity in the world that you see it. Let those people play, and let those people play characters like them. I think that's, you know, that is the journey that needs to be made. Just because we're here doesn't mean there aren't more people we need to help step up.
I'm just wondering if anybody has any thoughts about, I mean, and obviously we're not in the proper setting to have that conversation about including people of color.
Yeah.
But, you know, just as we're starting to have thoughts about, you know, other films that have been released this year, other levels of awareness, full disclosure, I got to watch The Wedding a little bit, and there was a gospel choir, there were other pieces of awareness there. So I can still touch with that. Are there things that we can do as people of privilege that open that next door?
I mean, invite them in. I mean, I'm playing right now, again, it's not great, but one of our players is black, and that's not something I think that identity plays into the game, but like our representation of our characters, pretty much every character except for mine, because mine is not humanoid in any way, has darker skin, so that kind of like that representation even of the visual, like we're playing this fantasy game, but hey, these fantasy characters are of color. But I think even in experience of friends who've played in groups, invite those people, because that's such a huge step.
Yeah, one of the things I just stepped down for, not because it wasn't fun, but for other reasons. I was the faculty advisor for the Baron Gaming Group for a couple of years, and one of the things that we did, and they took the lead on, but I was really encouraging them, is to interface with a lot of the different groups on campus that were populated by people of color and some of the international students, to get them more involved and to see, and particularly during Welcome Week, and they had a huge turnout from people. Particularly, we have a lot of Chinese students, and they thought that was phenomenal, sort of a welcoming thing. And then like the African American Student Association got involved, and so that was one thing that they were trying to do to increase. They are impressive that they have a number of women, but I think the younger generations, it's, at this point, like my kids, it's like, of course you game because that's what your parents did, and it's like that's what you do on the weekends.
Right.
And I think that's also changing things.
Yeah, I mean, like,
The thing with gaming is it doesn't matter race, creed, religion, orientation. It's what your character can bring to the table.
right.
It's like it doesn't matter if you're black, white, male, female, non, anything. Can I eat
Tree.
Lizard.
Can I hit it with my axe and kill it? I mean, it's not,
Yeah.
like you said, it's with gaming, I mean, you can be anything.
Mm-hmm.
And
And it's a great way to explore, different aspects about your personality and things like that. Like, have a character that's more outgoing, and you can, try and work that in if you're an introvert,
Right.
or you can play characters that mirror yourself, like in our group, our one friend is very, quiet and non-confrontational, and that's the type of character that she plays. But if we didn't have her, the game probably would have imploded a long time ago. So,
I'm sorry, you had your hand up several times, and I just haven't gotten to you.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, like, even, with that said, I think it's really important to, especially take a look at ourselves when we are playing a character that isn't exactly like us. Like, I'm a Middle Eastern transgender male, but I was raised by two white people, and I was raised in a community that was, like, relatively accepting of, like, who and what I am. The experiences that I have reflect on my characters a lot. The first character that I ever played in my first fake D&D session, because we didn't know how to play, was a trans guy. And all of my characters since then have been queer, gender non-conforming. And I feel like it's really important to take our experiences, maybe not shift them onto our characters, but make sure that we don't take other people's experiences and put them on our
Agreed.
characters and act like we know everything about that. Because I know you said that, like in your campaign, a lot of the characters, or all of the characters, are like darker skinned. But I have had sessions where I've had like white people playing characters of color who perform the race in a way that, like, is not great. So I think it's important to look critically at ourselves and how we're playing a character and make sure we're not.
Right.
are you able to talk to them about that? I mean,
I have
So
since
yeah, so I mean that's.
And what you brought up was exactly what I was thinking about too. Is like playing your best self as this, like as opposed to your worst self as this.
Yeah.
But, go ahead, please continue.
No, continue,
you're so,
please.
You're so very polite, and I love that about you. But I will talk over you, Eddie. No, please, continue what you're saying. You're so wise. You've got a lot to offer.
I was also going to say that I feel like that goes into like playing a woman character as well, because like we all have these different experiences with our genders and our races and our sexualities and just our identities as human people. And I think that we can learn a lot, but it's also important to learn from outside sources like actual people of color on how not to be racist.
Right. Yes.
Playing a character.
Yeah.
And I think one of my biggest concerns about playing a female character is offending one of the women at the table, by doing something that.
So then I think that
stupid guy thing.
that's a good point, though. Is like,
what a guy thinks a woman would do.
yeah.
Totally wrong.
Do you have to play the character if it's a different gender or race or anything with that in mind, or can you just play them and then it is what it is, because like playing something that like, oh, this is what I think a woman would do is not a playable action. I did theater for a little bit, and so that's not something that you can play as an action. You want motivation, you want, you know, something that your character is going after. So I think something along those lines is, you know, that conversation of like, yeah, why is it important that you introduce this character in a sexual violence situation where it's just a person doing a thing? You know, I think there's more to be said about the status of the character, who they are, what they do, and I think those are both like, you know, don't perform a gender or a race or anything like that. I mean, I'm playing a Dragonborn, so I don't really think I can perform what I think a Dragonborn does. She just does what she does. So I think that's also been really good for me, because I'm not trying to like play something I'm not in a way that is reality. I'm playing something I'm not in a way that is fantasy. I get to make those rules. And I think that's super important. I mean, with playing like a tree, like you're playing something you're not. So
I play a cat.
You play a cat. Right, so yeah, like, how there's no like doing a specific thing.
I may have offended my cat.
Cats are always offended.
Rob, please join us.
What are your thoughts about, like we've been so far having a discussion in, fantasy tropes where there's not a whole lot of reality, or we can create the reality whatever we want.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about playing games that are historical based, like a Call of Cthulhu set in the 20s, where the history is that there was a lot of racial and sexist baggage. Do you just edit that completely out? Do you find a way to incorporate that is acknowledged but not dwelt upon? What are your thoughts about how to do that? Or
So I'll admit I don't play a whole lot of historical games, but I would probably respond to that the way that another hat is the SCA, is that, that yes, back in the SCA, Society of Creative Anachronism, reenacting medieval times, but without that whole sexist stuff going on.
Like, it's like the best. You
the
get
best
to
stuff,
pick and choose.
Right? So that, like, women can be knights and women can do that. And I would think that unless there's a specific storyline that is consistent with an event that actually happened where that stuff has to happen, then minimizing that to the extent as possible, I think would make the most sense. Same way that the SCA tends to do that. That would be my thought.
Yeah, well, that I would say. And plus, I think that we also tend to, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I mean, at least I tend to would not necessarily pick that, like we did the Buffy, which is not historical at all, but it is current day, right? So it's a little bit of fantasy. And you get, to have Buffy as your model, so.
Yeah.
Well, and I would also say to that, I think there are a lot of overlooked important women throughout history that could be an opportunity to bring those to light.
I mean, just saying.
It might all depend too on your gaming group.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a setting called Victoria, and it is basically Victorian England era with elves and cat people and fantasy setting. You can't, and one of the things when defining your character is you pick your social status. You can play high status, mid status, and low status. A low status woman is going to have more freedoms than a high status woman who can't be seen alone with a gentleman without causing scandal.
Yeah.
But like I said, it all depends on the setting and your gaming group. Like the person who runs Victoriana for me is my girlfriend. She's also a huge history nerd. So this is like her thing. And our storyline is I have a upper middle class young lady, and that is, it's like we had an adventure. We were going over to France, and our airship was attacked by pirates. And I got carried off to the pirate stronghold. Oh my God, my father was going to disown me. Because I was alone. Nothing happened. But I was alone with scoundrels and ruffians. And oh my God, we need to marry you off now before it ruins the family.
But that
You
was
know,
history.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
truism in history.
And I mean, that is the setting, but it's not. I struggle with it because I'm a modern woman, and it's like, oh my God, Dad, come on, you know. But it's accurate to the game, and because she and I both understand that,
Yeah, and I think
that's how we're.
Are there men in your game?
No.
Well, and
Well, then-
that
Because
might.
it's changed
It's
stuff.
unfortunately,
Yeah.
it's a one-on-one.
Yeah.
So it's a little, but there's, like I said, I mean, we try when we game, we try and be both, you know, diverse, and at the same time, it's like, it's kind of hard because my gaming group is all boys. So.
And you know what, that is, I have to tell you, we have that conversation because that's fascinating to me. Because I think a lot of us, you know, kind of knowing and living in the world we do as modern women with our rights, it is difficult, I think, to put us back. And very much to your point, it is difficult to imagine us in different situations. And there are some other things that we need to take into consideration, very much in the way I think you probably describe cultural competency. That idea that there are things we don't know about other cultures or other beings. Trees, I got, you know, not Dragonborn, I got nothing. But you know, but other cultures that exist here, we can definitely learn. I think there's a great learning opportunity there if we take it right. I'd like us to flip that script though, because we've talked a lot about women and other, you know, transgender and other ways of expressing us ourselves sexually, in our sexual identity and our gender identity. But if we go back to the very beginning and we kind of talk about gaming with men where they want to blow shit up all the time, and don't get me wrong, I love a man who blows shit up, I really do. Can I swear? Okay, it's too late for that.
bleep it.
But I'm
Already
just
did.
wondering, is that a stereotype for us?
That's true.
Yeah.
And what can we do as women to engage men in a way that you know, obviously not everybody blows shit up. I mean, and I definitely appreciate, you know, going out. I typically play like a ranger kind of thing. Great red hair, but you know. But are there games that we've had with men where they haven't exhibited that? And how do we kind of work with men? Because I think in the best aspects of this game, this can be places where we communicate and we kind of get that world of communication between men and women and other gender identities, all of us communicating together and working together. And then I don't want to leave my HP folks, you know, in the lurch. I want to go to you guys last. So what about men and interacting with men, and what positive experiences?
No, I've had a
Can we
lot.
think out?
More so than
All of my role models are actually, I mean, all the people that I play with, except until Pauletta, most of my games I've been the only girl. And so I've had to, you know, Arsinoe, a boy playing Arsinoe, the healer, all the time, and me like being like Arsinoe going, no, you have to go and do this. Like, even though I'm playing a girl, I'm, you know, a barbarian, and so I have to go and kill the thing. And, you know, having a guy coach me on, you know, how to be more masculine, so to speak, a little bit. Not that I achieved it ever.
Although,
in
we
fairness.
do have, while you were the only woman in a couple of those groups, a couple of the other men were gay men.
Yeah.
So there was some
Always.
diversity
Yeah.
in that nature.
Right.
Yeah,
It was
and they were the guys that
a gay
also
man
excluded
trying to
me the
be
first
more
time. Yeah. Yes.
So we are finding
I'm
different
sorry.
identities for sure. I mean,
Yeah.
have you had games where you've had interactions where you wanted to maybe be more aggressive and they've kind of counseled?
Yeah.
Like, no, we have.
Yeah,
We
no.
gotta back that up.
So the gaming group that I first started playing with, it was 3 women and 3 men. All of us, well, all the men were heterosexual, straight, Caucasian men, and there was one. He always played the face, the one who was always sort of making the deals and stuff. And my character like to blow stuff up all the time. And there was many, many, many times where that character was like, this is not the time. I will tell you when. And he played that, and he was kind of like that in person, but more so in game. It was definitely his gaming persona, where it was all about the wheeling and the dealing and the making the relationships. And the therapist in me was like really impressed, but the character who wanted to blow stuff up was like, come on, is he looking without a head? So yeah, absolutely. There have been times where the men, and it was a total male masculine character. But really had that sort of nuance. It's okay to not be the typical, brute force male in the game.
So on No Dice, we bring in a guest player for we have like 4-game arc that we do with a guest. So that way you get a little bit of like changing it up, and like each guest brings something to the table for that particular, adventure part of the whole campaign. And the one bit we did was with the character played by my friend Travis. And he played a character called Dr. Gary Big Diggs, PhD. We loved Gary. We loved him so much. But he was a half-orc cleric. So the thing about this character is that he was like big, and we ended up in a fighting arena for that particular game, and so he was ready to smash. But on the other hand, he was also a cleric, so he was so focused on the healing and making sure that our group, like, he was kind of coming in being like, are you guys okay? How can you all work together? And it was such a great like juxtaposition of this softness that would then like turn quickly into this like protection rage. And it was such an incredible, I think, dichotomy of that character, and it was honestly like that. My friend, it was just kind of him as a half orc, which was really fun. But it was such a great like moment. And then we had another character later on who was a half elf bard, and he was just kind of following us around, like singing some songs, and like because he just loved the main adventuring group. He just loved us. So that was like a kind of like a soft kind of like, hey, you guys are great, things are awesome. And he wasn't like going around like, I need to punch that's my character just wants to go around punching people. So it's like there was that flip of, especially I think because of the difference in the characters versus the players of personality, and then like another guy coming in and being like, all right, how can I just play something? It's never I've not had any experience where it's been like, I'm just gonna come in and be a dude.
Hulk
like
smash.
Yeah, because like even Diggs was like, he would smash, but then he would be like, I gotta heal you, are you okay? And it was like the most incredible thing. Even the first guest we played with, Sarson, he was antagonistic. He tried to like tear our party apart, but in a way that's like the bad guy you love to hate. And I think but even that wasn't aggressive. He was more like mental in terms of that. And I think that in that playable space, there's so much that you can bring, that I think that bringing, guys, girls, non-conforming into the table, it's a matter. I think my personal opinion is it should end up on what the party needs. Mm-hmm. What does the party need, and what can you play? So if you want to play Hulk Smash, play Hulk Smash. But if you want to come in as a cleric, do it that. There's so many options.
And I love that you brought that up. So I, confession, hate playing board games. I hate it. I suck at it. I really hate competition. I sometimes can turn into this person that I really don't like, and so I just stay far away. So that is why I love RPGs, because it is about what the party needs.
Yeah.
It is about cooperation and even stuffing your ego down if you need to, or in that other position, like being like, yeah, I get to be the star this time. Well, I don't have to be the star every time.
Yeah.
Like, I can be support.
Mm-hmm. So building on that, just real quick, talk about my real job. I'm a therapist, and I do research on therapy, and so we'll have data hopefully in about a month. One of my former students, who's a therapist in a middle school, got permission from his principal to write a D&D campaign for therapy for kids with conduct disorder problems in a middle school. And he's been running a game all year specifically geared towards developing team relationships and turn taking, and the actual campaign is based on dialectical behavior therapy of emotional regulation skills and interpersonal functioning. And I'm just thinking like 20 years ago, if I would have gone to a principal and said, I would like to use D&D to treat your troubled kids, I would have been like, my license would have gotten taken away. But the fact is, like, it's been it's anecdotal because we don't have the data yet completed, but it's working. Like, it's creating this team relationship, and it's both genders, and these are like 7th and 8th graders, and it's a way for them to deal with stuff but use it and do it in a way that's not threatening. And it's so fascinating that's happening.
She had mentioned other games, and I was wondering if you'd be willing to share experiences of games other than RPGs, such as like online gaming or console gaming, if you wouldn't mind.
In terms of what?
Playing, like, online MMORPGs, things like that.
My guess is that is actually more rampant with patriarchal bullshit.
No, it's just
Sorry.
And Hermione.
Yes.
We actually play a lot of video games, speaking to that, and they're all role-playing games. I don't know if you've heard of the Elder Scrolls, but they have it online. And I thought, kind of combining those past two things we were talking about, is I had a group of Australian men, all of them, who didn't think I could compare, and then they saw the damage I would deal, and they were just astounded. So anytime I was on, like, I would stay up, because they're 12 hours ahead of us, and I would stay up all night, and then I would just blow them away every time. And I just thought it was so amazing. I was the only girl that would not let any other girls in the group, and it was just amazing. Nice. So
The old boys club crap.
Yeah.
Well,
they don't care anymore.
so I would just like to put this thought out there: is why does it have to be that we are accepted if we fit into the masculine role of being the badass and blowing things up? Like, to me, that still shows that we, even as women, value a masculine mode, and there's nothing wrong with masculinity. I mean, like, we obviously need it to get shit done, right? Like,
there's benefits to it.
Yeah, there's benefits, but
the MMO thing is kill the things that stop. So being able to,
I totally get that, but I'm just, this is sort of like meta. Do you know what I mean? Like, this is like stepping back and going, okay, yeah, that's fabulous. I'm so happy that you represent it. But like, why does that have to be the represent?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Well, I suck as a healer.
Hold on, he's back there. Back there.
he's gotten it.
Sorry.
He's gotten
I was
it.
just gonna say that even like what you said about like why do we have to be that way, and then you say, well, a part of it is just like blowing shit up, but like why does that have to inherently be like masculine?
Yes.
Right.
Thank you.
Well, but it has been identified as the masculine, right? It has been identified as the thing that shows strength. There is strength in compassion as well,
huge.
for sure.
Yeah.
And there's strength in being vulnerable. There's strength in, I'm gonna cry. Hold it. My daughter likes it.
No, but I love that.
Right? Thank you.
But yeah, and I.
Right.
Yeah, and I love
Nobody's
that,
surprised that I'm crying.
Yeah, because why do we put masculine on one side of traits and feminine on, we kind of have referred to, feminine as the healing, comforting, taking care, and the masculine is like kind of the Hulk smash kind of. But like, why do we ascribe these traits, and why can't we see both as powerful?
And the funny part is, realistically, because I've been doing research in this, is if you look at particularly
Mama Bear? I'm sorry.
Well, if you look at the generation, the millennial generation, those aren't holding up anymore.
Oh, right.
Like, they're not.
Right. But I guess what I'm saying is it's valued still. That particular, whatever it is, whether it's masculine or feminine or whatever, is still valued.
Well, and if you think
as opposed
about,
to a balance.
like, Big Bang Theory, which is one of my favorite shows, and I absolutely love that show. But the fact that none of the women game, I'm like, just statistically speaking, like, at least Bernadette or Amy or whoever Raj is dating for that week, one of them should be a gamer. And the fact that they're all like, oh my God, no comics. I'm like, come on.
There's also where the girls are playing.
Yeah, and they really get into it. But the fact that they are just like at least one of them statistically, because like 1 in 3 women are. I mean, that's if you go to, we do.
Melanie, can I? Oh, sorry. No, go ahead.
I was gonna say one of the things that I like, because I do a lot of console gaming and a lot of not a lot of online gaming, but video games and just RPGs in general. The one thing I do like is, you said, why does like there's the masculine traits, the feminine traits. You don't really find that so much in the games anymore. It's like in like certain video games, the only difference in how much damage your character can do, or how the characters, other like the NPCs will treat you is there's like very minimal differences in that. There's like no stat differences. It's like a female warrior is and can be just as strong
Do you guys have
as a
three
male character.
I think we're out
Certain
of time.
games, yes, like they will treat you differently because you are an elf, because elves are second-class citizens in the game.
You know what, guys? And I love. There's so much stuff in here that has been fantastic and beyond my wildest expectations. Can we have a quick hand for our panel? Thank